valuable presentation, and also thank you because I know you had a lecture and you had to make a break and come to our conference now. Now I'm going to invite Professor Drissia CHOUIT. I hope the pronunciation is right. You were a little bit later to the Zoom room because of some technical issues, but we are very happy to have you here as a professor, as an expert, and also because of your valuable experience during the time you were in UNESCO. And now I would like to invite you to start your presentation, but because of lack of time, I would like to kindly ask you, please manage it in 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Dus. Thank you for inviting me to be a member of this panel of experts. I had some problems with the PowerPoint, but I can manage even presentation without it. So today, with all this discussion, I listened carefully to your presentation and to the second presenter. Very interesting indeed. My question to him is, how can we include virtual reality in our teaching? Is it specific for science disciplines, or can faculties of arts and humanities communication benefit from it? How can we benefit from it? Because when we hear virtual reality, we see it as it is something really distant from our lives. It is for playing, it is for inventing in robotics and all, but not close to our everyday lives. If you can help us understand this, we will be grateful. Professor Dus, always I have listened to you many times, and the question to you is about the cultural adaptability in your theory. My intervention will emphasize the interrelationship between language, communication, and culture, and of information literacy in everyday life, in the digital age, and in the time of convergence of communication, and in the time of the explosion of communication. It is titled Linguistic literacy, a key component in intercultural understanding. So I will first introduce the UNESCO and United Nations University Network on Media and Information Literacy and Intercultural Dialogue, of which I have the honor to be a member since its creation in 2011 in the first forum, international forum on media and information literacy. I see this occasion to welcome the London Institute of Skills Development, which has become an associate member of this network of universities. Brief presentation. This network was launched in 2011, as I said, in the first international forum on media information literacy and intercultural dialogue. It is also conceptualized as a global chair on media and information literacy because it is considered as a revolving chair that hosts annual activities of member universities during celebration of the Global Media and Information Literacy Week, which takes place on a yearly basis since 2011. The Global Media and Information Literacy Week was officially adopted by the General Conference of UNESCO in November 2019, and it was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in March 2020. The first international forum on media information literacy held in Fez at the University of Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah in 2011 came out with the first declaration which combined both media literacy and information literacy. Before that, media literacy was studied apart, and information literacy apart. They were not put on the same umbrella. This network also has a yearly publication called the Milid Yearbook, in which members and all those interested publish every year. So what is the relationship between language, communication, and intercultural literacy? And media and information literacy and the work we do in the network. In fact, media information literacy is a powerful facilitator of intercultural dialogue, mutual understanding, and a cultural understanding of people. Intercultural literacy is a key component of media information literacy, as we should be able to relate media and information to different contexts and different cultures, and we should also be able to use effective cross-cultural communication to this effect. There is no doubt, and you would all agree with me, that most of the ills of our modern times have cultural origins. Therefore, understanding co-cultures in one's own country, and please pay attention, I'm using co-cultures, I'm not using subcultures. Co-cultures in one's own country as well as foreign cultures is a key literacy skill in the 21st century. Believing in cultural diversity, constructive dialogue, and peace communication is, I think, the threshold for a peaceful world based on mutual understanding and mutual respect. So in what follows, I will present the idea that understanding starts with understanding the self. Understanding the other cultures starts with understanding one's own culture. Respecting the other starts with respecting oneself and one's own culture. Now I move to the linguistic side, linguistic literacy and intercultural understanding. Linguistic literacy, in fact, involves both language awareness and conscious communication. All have an unconscious knowledge about language, which enables us to communicate in different contexts with varying degrees of efficiency. So the aim of this part is to bring to the consciousness this unconscious ignition. The focus will be laid on awareness about how the process of communication takes place for a better understanding of the self and the other, and both at the discursive relationships in which we are involved. As communication starts with the self, the first aspect to tackle is self-awareness. To improve one's self-awareness by being aware of who we are, how we think, and which beliefs and value systems we hold. We should also be self-critical by analyzing the way we think and questioning our attitudes and beliefs to make sure that they are not based on unconscious biases or stereotypes that may lead to prejudice or exclusion of some people. Equally important is to be aware of how we communicate with others and how we react to views, attitudes, beliefs, and value systems of others. At this very basic level, we can see hints of openness if we have an accepting attitude vis-a-vis different perceptions and values. In the opposite case, we have to take time for introspection, because self-understanding, self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-respect are at the origin of understanding and respecting the others. Likewise, understanding the communication process is equally important because it helps us understand ourselves, both as individuals and as social beings. Communication happens when there is an interaction between an internal stimuli within the self and the external stimuli in the context of communication. This shows that personal elements like personality traits, frame of reference, attitudes, and perceptions are elements that each individual brings with him or her to the table of debate. This should be kept in mind for effective intercultural dialogue. In order to understand others and to understand their feelings and concerns, communication should never be taken too personally. Language awareness refers to understanding how language works, how language is encoded and decoded, both at the discursive level and at the level of encoding social and power relationships. It is also about the way we give to our wordings, the wordings that we use in our everyday life, or wordings to which we are exposed in various communication contexts and platforms. It is also important to keep in mind that the way we name people, places, things, and events impacts on our perceptions and attitudes. We should also keep in mind different wordings of the same thing lead to different meanings and interpretations and convey different underlying attitudes and beliefs. See, for example, these labels used for the same events or people, and you can see that there is a big difference between calling something protest, the difference between protest and vandalism, difference between protesters and insurrectionists, difference between protesters and terrorists, difference between COVID-19 and Chinese virus, difference between war in Iraq, war on Iraq, and Iraq war. The difference between the use of the active voice to portray Hamas actions and the use of the passive voice to report mass killings of Palestinians by Israel. And the question, why do we use ethnic cleansing instead of using genocide or crimes against humanity? I would like to highlight a subtle type of organized disinformation, which is the careful use of language to influence people's perceptions, attitudes, and actions. The Iraq war was called Operation Iraq Freedom by the Bush administration. The word freedom is used to construct a positive attitude and the belief that the war was meant to help Iraqi people get rid of dictatorship and build democracy, while facts prove totally the opposite. This war was also referred to as a clean war, using smart bombs, conducting surgical operations to construct a favorable public opinion and to make people believe that there were no casualties in civilians or American army because smart bombs attacked only military targets with high precision, described to be like surgical operations. This war used embedded journalism that reported only what was allowed to them to report. But Iraqi people had another story which did not find its way to audiences. It was proved later on that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and thus that war was not that clean and that smart. Concluding remark. The Iraq War gives a stunning example of the skillful use of language for dubious purposes to construct and control public opinion, helped in that by cutting-edge technology and embedded journalism. The divisive, bipolarized approach used by former American presidents Donald Trump throughout his presidential term and his unwillingness to trust democratic institutions in last elections is another example of the disastrous effects of organized disinformation. What happened at the Capitol on the 6th of January 2021 is alarming. It is this organized disinformation that constitutes a threat to democracy, to citizenship, cultural diversity, constructive dialogue, and which should be combated by all means. Language is power. Language is powerful, not only in the sense that it is part of our identity and part of our belongings, but also because it enables individuals and institutions to create the reality that suits them. What we communicate does not reflect reality because it is filtered by our own lenses and how we perceive the reality referred to in the message. This is of particular relevance to media and public communication. This is why we should not be locked in one-sided perspective and dogmatic views and attitudes. We should be open to multiple perspectives. We should diversify our sources of information, and we should empathize with others for a better future for us. We are all different but equal in rights and dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting to listen to, especially the last part.